Today's lesson is survival tips for hiking trips. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And I am full of energy. I want to head out and do some hiking. Taiwan, of course, is a hiker's paradise. There are hundreds of places to go hiking. But, of course, as the Boy Scouts say, always be prepared. If you're going to go hiking, you need to consider that you might run into some difficult situations.
That's right. So I'm not much of a hiker, and even though I want to get into hiking because Taiwan is the perfect place for it, I figured I should probably start slow. So start by going for short walks on some trails, on some easy trails, and then go for some longer hikes. I guess hiking is usually used to refer to long walks in the countryside, whereas what I'm doing right now is just taking short walks just outside the city.
Right. So if you live in the city, you might be taking strolls or going for walks in local parks and things like that. Or like Helen said, you might be going on some local trails in the suburbs of Taipei or Kaohsiung or wherever. But if you're going into the mountains and you're going up steep trails and things like that, you're not climbing mountains, you're not doing rock climbing, but you are hiking, then of course you might need to make some preparations in case something nasty happens, like going into cold weather or it starts raining and things like that. So yes, indeed, you do need to be prepared. So today we've got some survival tips for hiking trips. So let's find out what this is all about. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and then we'll be right back.
Survival tips for hiking trips. Going hiking is a great way to experience the sights, sounds, and solitude that only nature can provide. But while spending time in nature can be rewarding, there's always a chance of getting lost. That's why it's important to take the necessary precautions and know what to do if you happen to wander off the trail.
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 solitude， 这个字是名词，指平静愉悦的独处或是独居。例如 The lovers enjoyed the solitude they found at the private beach. 这些恋人们很享受在私人海滩平静愉悦的独处时光。或是 Living in the mountains is a good way to experience solitude. 住在山林中是体验独居的好方法。另外补充这个字的形容词 sole, S-O-L-E, sole, 表示单独的或是唯一的。我们可以说Rory was the sole person on the ship's deck at 3 in the afternoon. 下午3点船的甲板上只有 Rory 一个人。也可以说 Neil was the sole person who turned up to watch the comedy show. Neil 是唯一一个到场观看这场喜剧表演的人。接着我们看到形容词 rewarding, 指有回报的、有意义的或是令人满足的。例如 Carrie thinks her job is rewarding even though it involves long hours.Carrie 认为她的工作是值得的，虽然工时很长。或是 Doing volunteer work can be a rewarding experience. 做志工可能是很值得的经验。另外，将这个字去掉 ing 就成了名词 reward, 表示奖赏或是报答。像是 Every time the dog did a trick, its owner gave it a reward. 每次这只狗耍了一个把戏，它的主人就给它一个奖赏。或者I'm offering a reward of $50 to the person who finds my camera. 我提供$50奖赏给寻获我相机的人。再来我们看到单字 precaution. 这个字是名词，指预防措施或是防备。像是 I assure you that we've taken the necessary precautions to ensure the safety of our passengers. 我向您保证，我们有采取必要的预防措施，以确保乘客安全。再举一个例子You must take precautions against insects in this country because many of them carry diseases. 在这个国家，你必须做好防虫措施，因为它们大多带有疾病。
And welcome back. So diving right into today's lesson, it says here, going hiking is a great way to experience the sights, sounds, and solitude that only nature can provide. So if you like peacefulness, if you like calm, if you don't like a lot of noise and traffic and people around you, then going hiking is a great experience because it provides solitude and silence. Solitude is the state of being alone, but it's used in a positive sense. People who like to be alone enjoy solitude. They find solitude pleasant and relaxing. People who don't like solitude might feel lonely in that situation.
Indeed, and some people who live in big cities, of course, may want to get away from the rat race and go someplace quiet. So indeed, hiking's a great way to experience places that are far away from the city. You can experience the sights and sounds and the solitude of such a place. Only nature can provide those things. So yeah, you can see some great mountain scenery, lots of trees, lots of vegetation. Maybe you can see some animals or birds, or you can hear the sounds of waterfalls and things like that. And of course, the best thing is solitude, being by yourself and not having people cut you off at traffic signs and stuff like that. But while spending time in nature can be rewarding, there's always a chance of getting lost. So yes, it is true that spending time in nature is rewarding. It can help you in a lot of ways. Still, there's a chance of getting lost. And you don't want that to happen because if you get lost, you could be in big trouble.
That's right. So the word rewarding here refers to something that offers pleasure and satisfaction. So some people may find it rewarding to clean the kitchen. Other people may not like to clean the kitchen or do any household chores, but there are some people who like to clean because they find it rewarding to see a clean kitchen or everything spotless. And here, while spending time in nature can be rewarding, there are some things that you have to think about. For instance, you might get lost.
Indeed. So lots of jobs can be rewarding even though they don't pay a lot. Like, for example, if you want to work with developmentally disabled people, well, the work can be quite rewarding even though the pay is not so great. And spending time in nature can be rewarding, but again, you might get lost and you need to make some preparations. That's why it's important to take the necessary precautions and know what to do if you happen to wander off the trail. So a precaution is just some kind of preparation you make ahead of time so that if something bad does happen, then you'll be prepared for it. Like, for example, if you live in the city, you need to take some precautions. You need to make sure your motorcycle has good tires so you don't slide on wet ground. You need to bring along your rain gear and stuff like that. You make some precautions or preparations, and then you'll be ready for when it starts raining.
That's right. So in the case of going hiking, you want to take precautions because not all trails are clearly marked. In many cases, when you are hiking on a trail, you know where you're going because the trail is marked. You see stone steps or you see signs at turns that tell you which way to go to get to your destination. But not all trails are clearly marked. When they're not clearly marked, there's the danger of going off the trail, which means you're walking in a direction that's no longer on the trail or you're not following the trail anymore. And in those cases, it's very easy to get lost. So what do you do when you get lost?
Well, you got to figure out how to find your way back to civilization, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get to it. Let's move on to the second part of our lesson. We will listen first.
Whenever you go hiking, pack for the worst-case scenario. This typically means packing clothing that protects against rain, a drop in temperature, and exposure to the sun. A light jacket might suffice, but depending on your location and the length of your hike, you may need something warmer or more waterproof. For longer hikes, pack survival items such as a knife, a first aid kit, a whistle, a flashlight, a communication device, and a map and compass.
第二部分我们看到动词 suffice 指足够或是充足。举例来说 I don't think we need to use all of the eggs for this recipe. 2 or 3 will suffice. 我不认为我们需要用和食谱一样多的鸡蛋，2或3颗就够了。也可以说 This food should suffice for everyone in the classroom. 这些食物对教室里的所有人来说应该是足够的。接着我们看到形容词 waterproof 指防水的。例如 The shoes are made from waterproof materials. 这双鞋是由防水的材料所制成的。或是 I use a special spray to make my bag waterproof. 我用一个特殊的喷雾使我的包包能够防水。
So whenever you go hiking, pack for the worst case scenario. A worst case scenario is a situation that is the worst situation that can happen to you when you are doing something. So when you go hiking, you have to think about what are some of the worst things that could happen on this hiking trip. And those are the worst case scenarios. And these are the things that you should think of before you go hiking and when you are packing for your hiking trip.
Right, so do some research or just think, hey, what could go wrong? What could possibly happen? What's a worst-case scenario or scenario? I think you can pronounce it both ways. Yeah, what's a situation in which things could get really, really bad? Well, this usually means packing clothing that protects against rain, a drop in temperature, and exposure to the sun. So those are some basic preparations that you need to take. You need to count for possible rain, okay? Even though the day you leave, it's nice and sunny and there's not a cloud in the sky, still it might start raining. We all know that living in Taiwan here because rain happens quite quickly. Or there might be a drop in temperature. That's also kind of hard to believe sometimes because Taiwan is a subtropical country. It's hard to imagine going from a really hot place to a really cold one, but it can happen. And then, of course, we've got the problem of exposure to the sun. And here, exposure is a noun. It just refers to when you are exposed to the sun. And you want to be ready for that because if you're not prepared, if you don't have sunscreen, you might get a nasty sunburn.
That's right. Even in some places, even short exposure to the sun or to the noon sun can damage your skin. So you really want to watch out and not let yourself be exposed, or you want to avoid exposure to the sun.
Indeed. So these are some things you usually need to take preparations or make preparations for. Again, rain, cold weather, and sunlight. Now, a light jacket might suffice. It might be enough. It might be sufficient. But depending on your location and the length of your hike, you may need something warmer or more waterproof. So if you go for a day hike up to Sanjiyan here in Taipei, you're probably not going to need to make a lot of preparations. A light jacket might suffice if it's a little colder on the top of the mountain there. But depending on your location and the length of your hike, you might need something warmer or more waterproof. So yes, if you're going to try to hike to the top of Yushan, for example, or if you're going to go for a 2 or 3 day hike in the Central Mountain Range, then you're going to make some more preparations. You may need something warmer and something that's more waterproof. And if something's waterproof, it does not let water come inside. So, of course, if you're riding your motorcycle when it rains, you want a waterproof raincoat.
Right. Waterproof clothes keep you dry. They prevent water from getting to your skin. Now, for longer hikes, pack survival items such as a knife, a first aid kit, a whistle, a flashlight, a communication device, and a map and compass. So when you're going to go on a longer hike, perhaps a hike that will last for 2 or more days, then you will need to pack more things, and you will need to pack things that will ensure your survival during this trip in case something really bad happens. And the first item is a knife, which is very simple because you might need a knife to cut things. It could be any number of things, but you need something sharp to cut things with. And then you need a first aid kit. And a first aid kit is a small box or a bag. It's usually a box, however, that contains things that you might need to help yourself or someone else when they suddenly get sick or get injured. So a first aid kit might contain alcohol to disinfect wounds. It might contain bandages and other stuff that you need to heal, to cover wounds and to save the person from being hurt even more.
Yep, it's very possible you may cut yourself on a sharp rock or something, so a first aid kit might help you out with that. And of course, if you get lost lost, a whistle might come in handy. You blow on the whistle to let people know where you are. And also a flashlight or a torch, I think it's called in England, which is a light that you hold with your hand. And I think there was a story in the news a couple of months ago about a flash flood, and a young girl was able to be found because she had a whistle. She blew the whistle and people were able to find her. So indeed, that's an example of something that can save your life there. So yes, indeed, for long hikes, bring these things along. You also may need to consider a communication device and a map and compass. Now, most people, of course, would think of a communication device when they think of their phone, but sometimes if you're in mountain areas, you will not have a signal there, so you may need to consider bringing something else, like a walkie-talkie or something like that. So that would be a communication device. Communication just refers to when people talk to each other, they send information or messages to each other, either by talking face-to-face or using a walkie-talkie or a phone or something like that. And a device is usually something that is electric or electronic, like a smartphone or like a walkie-talkie.
That's right. So aside from a communication device, flashlight, whistle, and a first aid kit, you should also bring a map and a compass. So a map will help you try to find out where you are in the middle of this wilderness. And a compass is a piece of equipment that is used for finding one's way. So a compass has a needle that always points north. So when you look at the compass, you know which way is north. And based on that, you know which direction you might need to go in order to find your way out.
Indeed. So these are some basic kinds of equipment that you might need if you're going for a long hike. And there are probably some other things you need to keep in mind as well. So let's go on now to the third and final part of today's lesson. We'll listen to it first and then we'll talk about it.
Packing the proper gear will help you survive being lost in the forest or mountains. But even more important is preventing it from happening. That's why you should always pay attention to landmarks around you and track your progress on a map. Another necessary precaution is telling someone about your intended route before you depart. And if you can help it, never go hiking alone. Of course, none of these measures will guarantee that you won't get lost. That's where key survival strategies come in.
最后第三部分，我们看到动词 guarantee 表示保证或是担保，像是 The store guaranteed that the microwave would work for at least 3 years. 这间店保证那台微波炉能使用至少3年。或者我们可以说 The salesman guaranteed that I would like this computer game. 售货员跟我保证我会喜欢这款电脑游戏。
So packing the proper gear will help you survive being lost in the forest or mountains, but even more important is preventing it from happening. So just before we looked at a list of things that we want to pack if we want to go hiking for a longer period, for a few days, and these things include a first aid kit, a communication device, map, compass, and so on. But actually the best thing to do is to try to prevent such dangers from happening. And packing the proper gear will help you survive being lost in the forest to begin with. And here, gear refers to just the equipment that you need to perform a certain activity. When you go hiking, you have hiking gear. Hiking gear could include a hiking pole, mosquito repellent, good hiking boots. But there are also pieces of hiking gear that will help you survive in the mountains or in the forest.
And remember, gear is like the word equipment. These are non-count nouns, so please do not add an S to these words. So you need to pack or prepare the proper gear or equipment, and that will help you survive being lost in the forest or mountains. But again, even more important is preventing it from happening in the first place. You want to be prepared. That's why you should always pay attention to landmarks around you and track your progress on a map. So bring along a map with you. It will probably be electronic in your device, But remember, you may not be able to get a map on your device if you lose the signal, so maybe bringing along a printed map might be a good idea. But also, you need to pay attention to landmarks, okay? Different things around you that you can identify. Of course, in cities, we have landmarks all over the place. The most prominent and noticeable landmark in Taipei, of course, is Taipei 101, but I'm sure you've got such buildings in other cities in Taiwan. These are popular landmarks. And if you're in the mountains, yeah, look for a specially shaped mountain. Yeah, there's a mountain shaped like a teapot or something like that. Or there was a big rock in the trail at a certain point, or there was a suspension bridge someplace. These are all different kinds of landmarks that you need to pay attention to.
Yep. And another necessary precaution is telling someone about your intended route before you depart. So you don't want to just go hiking alone without telling anybody your plans, because if you do that, if something bad happens, no one will know where to find you because they don't know that you've gone hiking. So before you take this trip, tell other people, hey, I'm going hiking. This is where I'm going to go, and this is where I intend to finish my hiking trip. So if anything happens and officials contact the people that you've told about your trip, they'll be able to tell the officials more or less where to find you.
And if you can help it, never go hiking alone, okay? So maybe sometimes you want to go hiking with friends, but hey, they're busy, you know, they've got a cousin who's getting married, they need to go to the wedding or something like that. But if you can help it, if it's possible, don't go hiking alone. Try to find someone to go hiking with you because, hey, if you break your leg, you'll have somebody there to help you come out of the mountains.
Right. And unfortunately, for people who like the solitude of the wilderness, of the countryside, maybe hiking with somebody else isn't very appealing because the whole point of hiking for many people is being alone. But that also may create a lot of risk and dangers. So you do want to consider going hiking with somebody that you get along with, somebody that doesn't need to talk all the time.
Indeed, and that doesn't seem to be a problem here. I think people in Taiwan tend to think it's very strange to go do things by yourself. It seems like everybody likes to do it with lots of friends, classmates, coworkers, and stuff like that. But again, there are people who enjoy the solitude. And of course, none of these measures will guarantee that you won't get lost. So indeed, if you have made those preparations, you still might get lost. And that's where key survival strategies come in. And that's what we'll talk about next time. So that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。登山健行可以让人好好的享受大自然，不过也有可能会迷路。我们课文第一部分最后一句写到 That's why it's important to take the necessary precautions and know what to do if you happen to wander off the trail。 好，这个句子里面有使用到 WH 疑问词引导名词子句，还有使用到 WH 疑问词加不定词所构成的名词片语。那我们来复习这些用法。首先呢 WH 疑问词像是 what, who, when, where, why, how 等等，可以引导名词子句，在句中当主词、受词或是主词补语用。要特别注意的是，我们拿名词子句来当主词的时候，必须视为单数，那后面就要搭配单数动词。例如 What she did for her friends is thoughtful， 她为朋友们所做的事是非常体贴的。这边我们用 what she did for her friends 这个名词子句来当主词，所以后面搭配了单数动词 is。好，那再看个例句哦。Do you know where my glasses are？ 你知道我的眼镜在哪里吗？那这时候句子里面的名词子句 where my glasses are 是当受词用，也就是当动词 know 的受词。好，如果我们用 WH 疑问词引导名词子句来当做主词补语的话，常见的用法会是主词加 be 动词加上 why, where 或是 how 等等，再加主词加动词，去表达什么什么就是什么什么的原因、地点或是方式。像文中他用到 that's why 点点点来表达那就是为什么点点点，那就是什么什么的原因。好，我们也可以造个例句，像是 That's how we met， 那就是我们相遇的方式。好，再来呢 WH 疑问词后面可以接不定词 to be 来形成名词片语。这个名词片语在句中它可以当主词、受词或是主词补语用。像课文它写到 know what to do， 其中的 what to do就是名词片语，在这边当 know 的受词。好，那其实 WH 疑问词加不定词 to be 就相当于名词子句 WH 疑问词加主词加助动词加动词。我们用例句来看会比较清楚。I don't know what I should say。好 what I should say 是名词子句。那现在这个句子我们可以简化成 I don't know what to say， 我不知道该说什么。那这时候 what to say 则是名词片语。好，那这时候这个名词子句 what I should say 跟名词片语 what to say 都是当受词用哦。我们最后要提醒同学们，如果你想要把像这样的名词子句简化成名词片语的时候，有2个规则要注意。第一个就是名词子句里面的主词必须跟你主要子句的主词或是受词是一样的对象。那么第2个规则则是名词子句里面要有情态助动词 should、can 或是 could。那我们来造个例句。Let me know where I should go， 让我知道该去哪里。那名词子句 where I should go 的主词是 I， 主要子句的部分它的受词是 me， let me know 的那个 me。 好， me 跟 I 指的是同一个人，而且名词子句里面还有情态助动词 should， 所以 let me know where I should go 可以简化成 let me know where to go。 好，以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Precaution. Be sure to take the necessary precautions when cooking on an open fire. Exposure. Exposure to the cold can cause serious illness and even death. Communication. Without his radio, Chris had no means of communication. Device. That store sells smartphones, tablets, and other electronic devices. Compass. Larry always packs a compass when he goes on overnight hiking trips. Gear. Madison bought herself some camping gear for her birthday. Landmark. The Eiffel Tower is one of the most famous landmarks in Paris. Guarantee. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to finish the project by Friday.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.